What's up? This is EJ Stewart.
What if I drop 40 days, 40 nights?
One, you can't do it.
All you are your words. If there's anything you learned about me, I'm going to keep it 100 with you.
Every morning, every night, for 40 days.
Going to be a long 40 days this year.
My skill shot will hold for your city for 40 days, 40 nights.
Rest in peace to all my ops.
For 40 days. If I can do that, then everything will be okay.
You're the guy who can't finish a sandwich. You think you can go 40 days? This isn't normal!
Oh, you're wrong, brother. I'm gonna go the distance.
Let's go! Let's go is right. What's up? This is EJ Stewart. This is 40 days, 40 nights. We are now in night number 8 of this odyssey with your boy EJ Stewart, talking all things sports and pop culture adjacent topics as well. Should be an absolutely awesome, fun show today. A lot of stuff happened today, man. This would be a sports-heavy show because there was some weird, big news happening throughout the day. So we'll start talking about the Yankees. The Yankees finally got their guy. They got Cody Bellinger. They signed to a 5-year, $165 million contract. We'll give you the details on that and my thoughts on that and where the Yankees go from here. Now that they're number one free agent target, and really the last big, he's really the last big target when it comes to the position players, is now off the board. So now we get to, if you're talking about the Mets or the Yankees, trades, which the Mets have done obviously as well with the Lewis Robert move. We'll talk about what the Yankees can do and the Mets can do moving forward now that we're kind of moving away from a lot of the big name free agents being available, with Cody Bellinger being the last big name to go. So we'll talk plenty about the Bellinger move. We'll also talk more about the Mets because Bo Bichette was introduced today with the New York Mets, which meant that we got to hear from David Stearns, president of baseball operations for the Mets, and he laid out some details about how he feels about the Bichette move, why he thinks that it's the right fit, and also the Robert move as well, and what's to come down next when it comes to Bo Bichette and the Met organization and what we can expect from them moving forward. So we'll talk about the Mets. We'll also talk about the Buffalo Bills, not a team I expected to talk about today, but they had an all-timer when it comes to press conferences. What this owner, Terry Pegula, what he was saying, the things that were coming out of his mouth, and the amount of, in my opinion, damage that was done with this with this press conference in their kind of, I guess kind of retrospective on the season and the firing of Sean McDermott, I think is not a small deal. I think is a big deal. I'll tell you why, and I will play part of the reason why I was a little late getting on today. Apologies also. I guess on YouTube I put down 8 p.m. instead of 6 p.m. So that threw off my clock a little bit as well. But I part of the reason why I was a little late today because I wanted to make sure you got to hear as much as possible from this press conference, because this press conference was unreal. You had the owner, Terry Pegula. You had the general manager, Brandon Beane, straight up lying to you about what is going on with the Buffalo Bills and some of the moves that they have made and who's to blame and who's not to blame for some of the things that have happened. And we're going to play liar, liar, plants on fire a little bit because I'm going to play some sound from some of these contested claims coming from Terry Pegula that definitely contradicts some of the narrative that was spun in this press conference. So we'll talk about the Bills and where they go from here. And then we'll talk finally about the Los Angeles Lakers. And again, another team I didn't expect to talk about today. I wrote today, it felt like in terms of who could be most messy, who could be the most messy organization, it felt like the Lakers and the Buffalo Bills were having their own versus battle. Versus battle nobody asked for, but a battle we were very glad to stay and watch and endure, because then you had a massive piece come out from ESPN's Baxter Holmes about just what's been going on behind the scenes with the Los Angeles Lakers and what has been essentially a years-long rift between the owner, Jeanie Buss, who obviously just sold the team. She's still technically running the team as the owner, but eventually will hand over the keys in a couple of years, and LeBron James and Clutch Sports and that dynamic and all the things that have apparently not been going well with this dynamic pretty much since they won an NBA championship. So we'll go down the rabbit hole of what exactly is going on in La La Land. So much to do. This will be a fun show. This is 40 Days, 40 Nights with your boy EJ Stewart. Of course, as always, streaming live on YouTube. New Generation Media is where you'll find us on YouTube. Also streaming live on X, EJ_Stewart, and streaming live on Instagram action. EJ, again, all the episodes you want to watch or listen to later on, you can catch on our audio podcast channel, New Generation Podcast Network. Day 8 is already up there, so if you missed earlier this morning's episode, you can listen to that. I actually finally got access to Day 7, so I'll be able to post that after I'm done posting this episode, so we'll get to talk about that. So fun stuff happening all around, man. This should be a fun show, and again, any support you can get to the channel, we appreciate. So if you can support us via subscribing to the channel on YouTube, please do that. Comment section, please do that. Liking this video, please do that. And of course, following us again, those are all the various platforms. We have 2 social media accounts for New Generation Media, New Generation Podcasts on IG, and New Generation Pod on X. And of course, subscribe to us there. Follow me, EJ_Stewart on X, Action EJ on Instagram, all the good stuff for you guys to do. So let's get the ball rolling this evening. Let's talk about the New York Yankees, who got their guy. They made the big move. It is official now. Yankees outfielder Cody Bellinger will be returning to the team on a 5-year, $165 million contract. The contract comes with a full no-trade clause. It comes with opt-outs potentially after the 2nd and 3rd year. So the Yankees, I think today you got to give Brian Cashman a ton of credit. It took a little while. It was definitely uneasy given some of the rumors about potentially the Mets or the Blue Jays sweeping in with an offer that Cody Bellinger couldn't refuse, and him then maybe spurring the Yankees to go to Queens or go to a division rival. And I think, understandably, a lot of baseball observers and Yankees fans looked at the Cody Bellinger recruitment and the Cody Bellinger free agency and kind of wondered if the Yankees were playing this right. They were standing pat on 5 years, $165 million. There are rumors he wanted 7+ years on the contract, and the Yankees, who, to their, much to the chagrin of some Yankee fans, have been slammed for their ability to kind of not go over the top for certain free agents, for being allowing themselves to be outspent, for feeling at times like they were going to penny pinch and not give in to certain free agency demands. And it definitely has cost them some players. It cost them Juan Soto. It's cost them guys in the past. And their unwillingness to go after certain guys because they thought the money in years were too high. This was Brian Cashman playing his hand, knowing the hand and knowing the cards that were dealt, and playing everybody like a fiddle. He knew at the end of the day the Mets were not going to give the kind of years that Cody Bellinger wanted, and I think he knew that the Blue Jays may be willing to give years, but not going to give the money that Cody Bellinger wanted. And he stood pat that he believed that a guy who was 30 years old, and at this point you're seeing probably towards the end of the prime of his career, but he's still the prime of his career, for a guy whose defense is important, whose versatility is important, whose athleticism is important. It was not smart for him to go for a 7-year contract. And I think, to be honest, as a Mets fan, thinking from it now on the Yankee side of it, I just watched the Mets give Brandon Nimmo a horrendous contract that was so bad that they had to take on some other contract from an older player in order to get rid of it. I think that Brian Cashman, maybe I don't know if he's looking at the Mets and what happened, but I think he was thinking about the market, thinking about Bellinger's age, thinking about his positioning, and said, I don't think anyone else is going to be running to give this guy 7 years or give this guy $40 million, $35 million of AAV on a long-term contract. So I'm going to stand pat. I'm going to wait this out and see if he really wants to be a Yankee. And I'm going to apply some pressure. We saw all those reports going out about how the Yankees were not improving their offer. They were not moving an inch, and they were totally prepared for Cody Bellinger to go somewhere else. The Yankees put that out there. They were daring him to sign a contract somewhere else, and it seemed like he was trying. I think he definitely was trying to get more money, get more years somewhere else. But that money in those years weren't out there. The Mets pulled out. They went to Luis Robert, which meant that they had got their guy that they're going to play at center field. The Blue Jays, who may be looking at other avenues to improve their team, weren't comfortable giving the kind of money per year, similar to the Kyle Tucker agreement, or weren't willing to give it the AAV value that Cody Bellinger was asking for. And they played this perfectly with the Yankees. I thought, when I talked about this issue and the impasse they were at, I thought you see, okay, Bellinger wants 7+. The Yankees only want to give 5. It sounds like they'll come to some agreement around 6 years, $200 million was essentially what the deal I thought the Mets should have offered. And the Yankees didn't even do that. They said, no, we're not moving an inch. You go find that money somewhere else, and you tell me whether or not you really are worth all this bread and all these years that you're talking about. They did not blink in this game of chicken, and now they got the guy they wanted at the price they wanted, and it is a huge move. I'm not going to sit here and poo-poo at all how important it is for Cody Bellinger to be back. I said from the beginning that this was and should have been the Yankees' #1 target this offseason. He had showed last year, similar to Juan Soto, that he was a perfect fit for the stadium, a perfect fit for the team, and in many ways he provided a lot of the things that Yankee fans and baseball observers had criticized the team for. He was not a guy who was only a home run or bust guy. He was not a guy who was a sieve defensively. He was not a guy who lacked athleticism. He had versatility. He's athletic. He plays good defense at multiple positions. He has a perfect swing for that stadium, but it's not only just home runs that allows him to be an impact player. He is a full-blown baseball player. That's a weird way to say that, I know. But to me, he's just a baller. I wanted the Mets to get him badly. I felt like what I saw from him from the Yankees, he did a great job for them. And in many ways, he fit even better with the Yankees than he did with the Mets. But I just being greedy. I was like, man, the Mets get their hands on this guy with his versatility and what he brings to the table. That'd be a great move. So the Yankees, with a guy they had to get, played kind of a high leverage, high risk game of poker here. And Cody Bellinger and his team folded. So you get the #1 target that they need to get, and then you also sign him to the years and money that you're comfortable with. It's a complete, utter win for the New York Yankees. And now, if you're the Yankees moving forward, you're thinking about, okay, what do we do now? I think the timing of this is probably frustrating if you're a Yankee fan. The fact that it took so long, and because there was going to be so much money tied into potentially this deal, I don't know for sure, but you wonder if it kind of ties up any other big moves that could have been made. And now it kind of frees up the Yankee opportunity where there's still guys in the trade market they can go after and guys that can go after via other means. Maybe the Yankees can now start to rev up this offseason that has been very quiet. Amed Rosario and Ryan Weathers and some of these guys that they've been picking up. Those guys aren't going to move the needle in any way, in any major way. The Yankees, came up just short in the division. They came up very short in the playoffs against their now division rival. Not now, but they've always been. But now definitely a true rival in the Toronto Blue Jays. So they're playing catch-up mode. For the Yankees, this is a hold-serve move. And so far, what we've seen from the Yankees has been them holding serve, which is not terrible. It's not a bad thing. We shouldn't just, run to that and say, oh, the Yankees aren't doing anything. They just bring back the same team. Because the offseason's not over yet. It's only January. We got plenty of time for pitchers and catchers. We got plenty of time for spring training. And we have plenty of time before the regular season starts. But at this point in time, they could not take any steps back. And for the most part, they haven't. Their bullpen has been damaged, and they're going to have to find a way to replace the guys they lost. I know Yankee fans won't be shedding a tear that Devin Williams is gone. And, what we saw from Luke Weaver at the end of the season, he kind of fell apart. And he was not the same guy coming back from his injury, his lower leg injuries, in the second half. When he finally got healthy, he looked like a different pitcher. So those guys maybe didn't perform very well, but those guys were all the team. Those guys were pitching in high-level situations, and there were multiple stretches where those guys pitched well for the Yankees at times. And Weaver was a very good Yankee for almost his entire career. So they're going to have to figure that out. They're going to have to find a way to get some bullpen arms, some high-end bullpen arms, because they're a little lacking, I think, in that regard. And I go back and forth about the starting rotation because I think we see with Cam Schlittler, I think he's the real deal. So he looks like a guy that I think is entrenched in the rotation. We saw Max Fried in terms of who he was, and he was a top frontline guy. But, and that's been the big but with him, who is he as a postseason pitcher? And that was what Atlanta said, right? Atlanta, the people that followed Max Fried's career said, you're going to love him in the regular season. Let's watch what happens in the playoffs and when crunch time happens and see how he is. We saw second half of the season, we saw him a little more wobbly. We saw then later on in the in the postseason, also a little wobbly. So good signing. I think a guy that obviously is a great use to the team, and he was a good pickup, but not the postseason maybe bulldog. Maybe I think Yankee fans hoped he could have been. And we know Carlos Rodon. I mean, that guy, can pitch well in the regular season, but big games, he scares me to death. Yeah, you still have Heel, and then you got the big dog, Garrett Cole, coming back, but he's coming back from an elbow injury. I don't think the Yankees look at their starting rotation as a weakness, But I do think that if you're talking about being able to go up against the Blue Jays this next upcoming season, and how do we get better? If you're not getting better, you're getting worse. I firmly believe that when you're talking about team building in almost all sports, football, basketball, baseball. If you're just saying, "Oh, we're just going to stand pat," look at the Buffalo Bills. They're a great example. We're going to talk about them in a little bit. You just stand pat and say, "Oh, we're just going to bring the same guys back and the same coach back, and we'll just see what happens, and hopefully we get better." And typically that doesn't happen. So I do think while their rotation looks pretty solid, it could go to boss level mode and final boss mode if they could add one of these top line starters. We know Freddie Peralta is the belle of the ball right now when it comes to the trade market. We will talk about the Mets and where they are there with that. The Yankees are supposed to be in on him, and obviously we know the Dodgers are in on him. If they can find a way to add a frontline starter to this and add some frontline bullpen help, I don't think they necessarily need a closer. I think Bednar could be that guy. I think you're fine with that. But if they could add at least one more true 8th inning, 7th inning type guy, I think you go into this Yankee offseason coming into spring training and say, hey, Brian Cashman did a good job. Should the Yankees have been in on Kyle Tucker in theory because of the Yankees? Sure, but you just got to live with reality and who the Yankees are right now. And who the Yankees are right now is they're not going to be the team that spends the most money. So with what they had in front of them and the holes they had and the priorities that they had, getting Bellinger back, bringing back some of the lower end pieces that they brought in that they want to keep around, and then if they could then put a starter in there and a bullpen guy in there, which I definitely think is possible. They have the prospects to do it. They have the players to do it. They can make some moves. And again, I do wonder if a Jason Dominguez, what his future is now that Bellinger is back, and because you're stuck with Trent Grisham for another year, they have some pieces available to them to improve the roster and shift some furniture around. So I think if you're a Yankee fan, you should feel very good about where you're at. It was definitely a off season of like, when is this thing gonna go? And if Bellinger was out the door, that would have been a disaster, because it seemed like the guys we were talking about to replace him, Austin Hayes, the dude, I can't remember his name. The guy who plays for the Phillies and of course plays for the Mets from here. Like some of the guys we were talking about in terms of replacing Cody Bellinger, I was absolutely not excited about. So the fact that you're able to bring him back into the fold, I think is a huge, huge thing for the New York Yankees. Big move for the Yankees that they're able to move on now. They get their guy. Cody Bellinger returns. And again, last thing I'll say on this. As long as Aaron Judge still has prime years left, any move that supports him is a good move. That was one of the biggest reasons why I felt like they couldn't lose Cody Bellinger, because Bellinger is their second best bat. If you want to quabble and say it's Jazz or someone else, I don't think so. I think Bellinger is very clearly their second best bat. And the Yankee offense, as we saw in the postseason, and Bellinger was part of it. I don't want to act like he was absolved from it. But they have a tendency to go real hot, and then in the postseason at times go real ice cold. And if you're gonna maximize these Judge years, you can't continue to lose offensive talent around him. You can't continue to lose your Sotos and these guys. The guys that you bring in to help, you got to keep around. So the fact that you'll have Bellinger back, you'll have Stanton back for the 80 games he can play before he pulls a hammy and has to sit out for 3 months. But usually he's around by the time you get to playoff time. The Yankees should still have a powerful, pretty potent lineup. You now have a team that should once again be much better defensively than it's been in recent years, because you have a guy like Bellinger, his versatility, and now again that support for Aaron Judge, that backup that he's going to need to help this offense be a more complete offense. It's a complete utter win for the New York Yankees. So bravo, Yankees, good job in how you've it seems like finally really kicked off your offseason. It almost feel like your offseason was in neutral until we figured out what was going to happen to Cody Bellinger. You got good news here. So Yankee fans, I believe, should be happy. Let's move on now, though. Let's talk about the New York Mets, who they had a big day today because they introduced their big free agent signing. Bo Bichette was introduced to the New York Mets. David Stearns obviously holding a press conference talking about Bichette's impact. I said when this move was made, I know there's been a lot of people spinning this as this is Mets panic when they didn't get Tucker. They just found the next good guy and gave him a bunch of money on a short-term deal, and now he doesn't actually fit in all those things. I don't. We can talk about the fit and whether or not it's perfect. It may not be the most perfect fit. I love the player. And I'm one of those guys that feels like, in all sports, stacking your best way to get out of a funk, your best way to get out of purgatory is always just improving your roster. Just improving the overall talent pool of your roster, the physical profile of your roster. If you're able to do that, the other stuff will figure stuff out. Even if it means that the guys you have on your team, you have to move on from because maybe the pieces don't fit correctly. The start is always to just get the best players available. So the fact that the Mets didn't get Kyle Tucker, who obviously was, in my opinion, the best position player available, but they get a guy in Bo Bichette, who I think was the second best position player available, who I think is an absolute stud. We saw this guy playing on one leg in the World Series, hitting home runs off of Shohei Ohtani. We've seen the kind of gamer this guy is. And I really think what I heard from Stearns and I've heard from the Mets really kind of through the sourcing that we heard before today and then today is I appreciated that they valued his intangibles in why they wanted him. Because I think that is important. I'll tell just a short little story here about my day today. I went out to the city, had to handle some business. I saw, actually, shout out to CP the Franchise. I saw CP the Franchise randomly on the subway today. That was really kind of random. I'm sitting there about to get off the train, and I look up, and he's just sitting right across. I'm like, yo. He's like, yo. So we said, what's up? Hopefully, we'll get to do work with CP the Franchise at some point. But shout out to him. But I'm doing business. I'm doing some stuff I have to take care of today. And I come back home. I'm exhausted because obviously 40 days and 40 nights is all fun. It does take a toll on you to do 2 full live shows, full preparation, all those things. So I was a little tired. So instead of maybe getting some work done, I just went to sleep. I took a nap. But I was asleep, and I'm someone, I like to sleep with the TV on, which has made it I love my fiance. It's been a lovely, lovely 8 years we've been together. But living with someone who cannot sleep with the TV on, it's been a little tough sometimes. Like I always forget how much I sleep much better with the TV on when I'm able to do it when she's away or when I'm taking a nap or when it's just me in the house because maybe she's on a business trip or whatever. So I took a nap. She was obviously working throughout the day. I took a nap, and so I'm sleeping throughout the day. But I had the TV on. I was watching MLB Network. I wanted to hear what they were saying about Bellinger and all the things, and then I passed out. As I'm sleeping, you're kind of going in and out. You can kind of hear whatever is on the TV, but it's not actually impacting your sleep in any negative way. But I'm hearing Brian Anderson talking about like Mets players, and like it almost like it's a game. And sometimes like this is a dream, but this is real. And I kind of peeked out. I'm like, oh, they're showing an old Mets game on MLB Network, which I kind of knew because I saw the guide when I was looking for something to watch today. I was like, all right, they're showing the Mets against the Brewers. Well, considering it's this year, that could not have gone very well. And this was the series when the Mets had at that point lost 10 out of 11 games. They were absolutely in a tailspin, and the Brewers were the hottest team in baseball. And they had just blew the first 2 games that they should have won. And now the Brewers, who were down 5-0 in this game, are trying to come back to go for the sweep. And I'm just hearing the names. I'm hearing Nimmo. I'm hearing Alonso. And the feeling I had was not what I expected. Like, you would think the feeling I would have is like, oh, man, like, I miss those guys. Like, they did all the great things that they've done. They're homegrown Mets and some good times. Now, obviously, this was a bad moment. They were about to blow another game. And what I think was, we can talk about the Marlins games and we can rank the worst losses. I could argue that was the worst loss of the entire season that they were playing on MLB Network. So thanks, MLB Network, for ruining my afternoon/early evening. But I'm kind of like, I woke up and then like towards the end of the game, now I'm awake because I'm getting ready to walk the dog and everything before I get ready for the show. And now like I'm kind of watching the game in and out, and the Brewers are making this furious comeback. And again, I'm seeing the names, I'm seeing the guys out there. And I was like, man, I'm glad we're kind of past that era. I'm like, and I've said like I've wanted Nimmo gone. And I've been one of the Mets fans that was more okay with Pete going than other Mets fans were. But I did give Stearns a lot of heat for letting these guys walk and feeling like the plan to replace them before the Bichette move felt a little half-baked and felt very much still like we were guessing as to whether or not these pieces were going to work. And to some degree, we are still guessing. That's been my biggest issue, is that there aren't sure things with the moves that David Stearns makes. This was one of the few things, to me, with Bichette that I think is a sure move. But it's not a sure thing that Polanco is going to be good at first base when he's a bad second baseman. It's not a sure thing that Marcus Semion's bat's going to turn around at age 34. Those are reasons to be concerned, even if you, like me, were okay with those guys leaving. But because I've been so focused in my criticism, and I'm not backing off of it, but I was so focused on my criticism about how much I hated just the uncertainty of the guys that were bringing in. I looked at the team and remembered, oh, right, this team broke my heart. This team choked. And this team had no kind of leadership. The baseball character of this team had great question marks because of some of these guys on the roster. And watching these guys lose and watching those names being called and knowing that they're not on this team anymore, regardless of their production, I'm like, you know what? I'm ready to just root for a different team. I'm ready to root for a different group of guys. It may not work out. I've told you, I'm not crazy about Luis Robert, who I think is another question mark that the team has had it. I'm not crazy about, Polanco being the first baseman, having no clue if he can play the position. Like, I have some questions about this. But I'm fine with being in this mode than deciding to bring all those same guys back for another year. I could not do. And the Edwin Diaz thing is still a terrible, terrible move that they made that they couldn't bring him back. But watching that terrible, soft team play baseball again was a reminder that, you know what, like, we got to let go of the past. We do not want to go back. I know that was a political saying for Kamala Harris. We're not going back. That's how I feel. I want to give my message to my fellow Mets fans. We're not going back. We're going forward. Can we argue about what's happening going forward? Can we debate about what's happening going forward? Can we say, I know on the camera it looks like I'm going backwards. I think this technically looks like I'm going forward. To me, it looks like it's going backwards. Can we look and say, oh, like there are some questions and we should, totally, let's debate it. Let's talk about it. Let's hold this team accountable. Let's hold this ownership accountable. Let's hold this president of baseball operations accountable. But we are not going back to the Brody Van Wagenen, Wilpon era Mets anymore. We're not going back to that era of players. We're not going back to that era of conversation about what those guys mean to the organization. Those guys, as a collection, not individuals, as a collection, they were mostly losers. And it's time to move on from that era. So that was just a little story time about what happened in my afternoon. But it's relevant because it goes into today, which is the Mets bringing in Bo Bichette. Again, he signed to a short-term deal, 3-year deal that has opt-outs in every year. And, and to be clear, like, in terms of they talked to his agent said, listen, like, we came here. I mean, they came here because they gave the most money. We know that. But he definitely made it sound like, listen, like, if things go well here and we came here because the Mets want to win badly and Bo Bichette is a winner and we want to win and we feel like this could be a great place to stay long-term. Obviously, he's an agent. He doesn't want to blow things up, but, I've heard Scott Boras go into press conferences and go into places and definitely play coy and make it seem like, I don't know what's going to happen. We'll see how this year goes. This didn't sound like that. This sounded like that if things just don't blow up completely, that this is definitely a place that Bo Bichette could call home for a long time. And hopefully if the Mets see what they need to see, they'll be smart and sign him long time. So we'll see what happens with that. Obviously, they've had history with this in the past. They re-signed Nimmo. They re-signed Edwin Diaz. So they've shown that they can do that for the guys they want. Let's hope that they're able to do that with Bo Bichette if all goes well. I want you guys to hear from David Stearns because obviously he talked about what was going on with the Bichette signing and why he feels like he's a good fit.
Well, I think first and foremost, he brings a really good player on the field. This is someone who's been one of the better and more complete right-handed hitters in all of baseball, really since he entered the league. And beyond that, it brings just an intense competitor, someone who never takes a play off, never takes an at-bat off, and that can only help the group as a whole. Yeah,
that is the aspect of this that I think for those who are saying, oh, like, panic move, Mets don't understand, he doesn't fit, that I think they're missing the boat on, that I'm now seeing, and I have been seeing over the last few days, was really important. That and I think that, I'll complain about all the things about the Mets. It is the fair assessment to look at that Mets roster and say, the baseball character of this team is not championship worthy. The character of this team is an issue with this team. So the fact that, Stearns first talks about him just being a great baseball player, a great hitter, which he's right. One of the best right hitters in baseball, when it comes to the fact that he can hit for average, that he hit for power, that he can do so many things. He does not strike out a lot. He's a high contact guy. He's a great hitter. There's just no other way to say it. But the fact that he kind of got off that quickly and just started talking about this guy is a competitor, does not take plays off, plays hard all the time. These are the things that they're telling you that the Mets were not doing. It's obvious. I don't think you just mention those things right off rip if those weren't actual concerns you had about your team. Those are the things that people have been saying the Mets don't do, that they don't play hard all the time, that they don't play with a level of focus. And he's saying this guy doesn't give up on at bats. This guy plays hard. He's a gamer. He's the kind of guy that, like he said, just helps an overall team because he's on your team. That is a good, fair, and appropriate assessment for why you'd want to bring in a guy like Bo Bichette on the team and why he's important. Other question mark about Bichette is this idea of him playing third base. Here's what David Stern said about Bichette playing third. He's not concerned about it.
We think he's going to adapt really well. Yeah, generally, in my experience, if we look around baseball, when you're moving a shortstop to a different position, they generally have the skills and ability to adapt to that different position pretty smoothly. He showed he was able to play second base on one leg in the World Series and did just fine.
Shout out to my boy Eric. What's up, Eric? Eric watching the stream here on IG Live. And he's right. He is right about that. Like shortstop, in theory, those guys are the best infielders on your team. They have the most range. They may not always have the most arm. You want a great arm at third base, but you want them to have a really good arm. They have great hands. Like that is the spot where you want your best fielder. I will say, Bichette defensively has not been great. I don't think he's been terrible. I don't think he's been a bad shortstop. But I think the best you can say, at best, he's been average. But still, he's a shortstop. Like it's not an easy position to play. So a average shortstop, in theory, as long as he has the arm strength, which we saw, this is different, but second base, we saw Jazz, his issues playing third was that the arm basically gave out. He's not throwing the ball across the diamond like that. As long as he has the arm strength, which short is a lot different than playing second and going to third. As long as he got the arm strength and the fact that he's a shortstop, David Stearns feels like he should mostly be fine at third. And it's going to be a question mark till we actually see it. But I think he said again, his work ethic, how tough he is, how much he cares about this. I think he's the kind of guy that's going to adapt to it. Well, again, the Mets going back to whatever issue you may have with the questioning of the fit, go back to this guy's intangibles, and that tells you that he should be fine. Again, speaking to what is important to this organization with this team right now, which is intangibles and things like that, and toughness and the no quit attitude that this Mets team has lacked. So that was David Stearns on Bo Bichette. I can't disagree with him. Like when the Mets made this move, I said, listen, like I don't think it's a bias. I watch baseball, but I said like this guy's been one of my favorite players in the game because of all the things that they're mentioning. Because this guy is a gamer. Because this guy is tough, and because the guy is a complete hitter. He reminds me of the really good hitters that I watched as a kid. And it's not to say that I am probably romanticizing a little bit about my day in baseball, but like he's not this all for one for all home run guy. He can hit for average, but he can hit for power. He is athletic when healthy. He's a good all around player, and he's a good all around hitter. And I think the Mets have really lacked that. Like, they have obviously have Soto, you got Lindor. They have hitters, they have Pete Alonso, but they haven't had a guy like this, it feels like, in a while. Like, I guess maybe 1 year Jeff McNeil is probably the closest thing to this, but he has more power than Jeff McNeil. Like, they haven't had a guy who can hit for a high average, who gets on base, who doesn't strike out a lot, who is so tough to strike out because he can stay in at bats. He knows how people will try to get him out, which allows him to put the ball in play. That kind of guy, they just haven't. Again, McNeil was kind of that guy, but not really, and then he fell off a cliff. They haven't had a guy at an elite level. Bichette does that at an elite level. So I think that's a reason to feel optimistic and feel good about this signing. Hopefully the third base thing will go fine. Obviously there are question marks about left field, and there should be. Maybe it's Carson Bench, who we've never seen play in the major league level, but was their first round pick from a couple of years ago. Maybe it's Brett Beatty, who I think has definitely shown he should be in the lineup every day. But now I have some concern about if you are moving him to an entirely different position full time, that can sometimes affect your bat and affect your hitting. And that also could be something that could be tricky, right? So we'll see how the rest of this goes, but I'm all in on the Bo Bichette thing. Let's also quickly, and I'll get to the big thing about the starting pitching in a second, as you guys can see in the lower third for those watching on the stream. But he also talked about the Luis Robert signing. So Robert comes in. We mentioned earlier he was traded by the White Sox to the Mets. Luis Angel Acuna goes out. And here was David Stearns on why he likes the Luis Robert fit?
Luis has big time upside, and we've seen it at previous points in his career, and all of those skills and tools that allowed him to perform at such a high level a couple years ago are still there. So we're excited to bring him into our environment, bring him into our team, give him all the support and help we can, and then watch him go play.
I mean, he's right to a certain degree. He still hits the ball hard. Obviously, he's still a great defensive player, so that doesn't leave you. So there's some aspect to that is, I guess, in theory true, that there's an idea that there's a guy in there that can be good, and they can maybe in their environment he'll be better. And certainly the Chicago environment was extremely toxic. They were a team that was trying to lose. They're a team that doesn't spend any money. And now he's going to a team that is very much invested in the baseball team. Say whatever you want about Steve Cohen, and I've said it. Say whatever you want about David Stearns, and I've said it. You cannot say that this team is not invested in the infrastructure of the program, how they're training guys, how they're conditioning guys, how they're supporting guys on and off the field. By every account, anybody that's talked about the Mets, they've said that the Mets have taken a major step up from where they were in the Wilpon era. That is undeniable. That is a fact. It's just a fact. Whether that's resulted in wins and losses, we've seen that be up and down. But they have at least tried. Luis Robert was in a place where they weren't trying. They weren't trying to support players. They weren't trying to get better. They were trying to get worse. So it makes sense that and maybe it sounds like it may sound like dismissive to call it spin, but it makes sense that the spin on this is, listen, like, he was in a place that was horrendous, and this is a guy who at one point was a star. Let's put him with our team and the infrastructure that we have and put him around other stars, and maybe he'll be really good. When he was with other good stars in the past, from the White Sox, we kind of forget. It wasn't a couple years ago. The White Sox had a pretty damn good baseball team. They had a lot of power. They had a good rotation. Like, they were a complete team, and then they just tore down, and it fell apart almost immediately. It makes sense to make that the talking point that he has all the physical tools. He's not an old player. The guy's entering what should be the prime of his career. Let's see what he looks like when he's not playing on that crappy-ass team. The only problem I have with it, well, not the only, but the major problem I have with it is I think 1 year of poor play is one thing. 2 full years of essentially him being the exact same hitter feels more like that is who he is rather than the 1 year of him playing borderline superstar level ball, and then the other years where he was good but kept getting hurt, wasn't playing full time in the major leagues and those things. 2 years of that kind of production where you're hitting 220. I know the second half of the year he was much better. He was hitting like 170, 180 for the first half of this past season. He hit much better in the second half of the year. You hope that maybe that can carry over. That hasn't always been the case. That feels like an old wives' tale. Like, oh, second half of the year he was swinging the bat really well, and then they think, oh, that means next year he's going to swing the bat great. It's a new year. It's a new year. It just feels like something to grab onto, and again, a talking point. I don't think it really is a reflection of like, well, that means the next year that player is going to then go out and break out and have a great year. I've seen it go. Sometimes they do, and I've seen plenty of years where sometimes they don't. And the Mets fans can run down the list of guys who are like, oh, this guy, Francisco Alvarez, been a great example. A guy who at times has had great second halves, and then you come into next year and he's hurt. Like we've seen this story over and over again with players who, they had a good second half and they figured it out, so now they're going to go to their next team and they're going to be really good. And it's like, no, the guy is still a buster. And you're playing the second half of the season, you got to take that stuff with a grain of salt. You're playing with teams that are tanking. You're playing with teams that don't care what's going on. You got players, pitchers, and guys who are now getting tired, long in the tooth. You're seeing much more minor league talent playing the second half of the season because you got teams, again, out of it, maybe want to bring up some young guys, see what they got, or teams that are now facing the war of attrition with their pitching and having no choice but to go to their farm system. So there's a lot of reasons why a guy may have a great second half beyond just them figuring it out, quote unquote. So it's a little skewed. It's not necessarily just an obvious thing that because he had a good second half, he's going to produce. But I do understand the reasoning behind what they feel like is a low risk, high reward move. The only pause I have with that is last year for a team that is, I don't know what the expectations are. I mean, they should be world championship, but Steve Cohen a couple weeks ago tweeted that I fully expect that this team should compete for the playoffs. And I'm like, playoffs? That sound like Jim Mora. What are we talking about? Playoffs? We should be doing something way bigger than playoffs. You're the freaking richest owner in Major League Baseball. You're talking about playoffs?
Playoffs?
Yeah, come on, no. We spend every year should be talking about what are we doing to make this team become a world championship team. That should be the question. So I don't know what the expectation is, but when 2/3 of your outfield, at least offensively, is that big a question mark, I don't. Sometimes I feel it's a little dismissive to say, oh, it's a low risk move. I'm like, well, Cedric Mullins was supposed to be a low risk move, and then he couldn't hit, and that it killed the team. Like, one of the big issues with this team was that once you got past like the 5th guy in the lineup, everybody else were automatic outs. Like, outside of Beane, it was a bunch of guys who you just knew were not a threat, and teams knew they could get out of the first half of the Mets lineup. Sometimes the first 4 guys, everyone else was food. So Luis Robert hitting 220 for the last 2 years and spending most of the last season hitting 180. You say, okay, low risk. I'm like, all right, but if he's bad, now the Mets who are trying to make the playoffs, get back to the playoffs, trying to win a championship, now they have a guy who can't hit in their lineup and they got to now figure out how to replace him. Or like, again, they had Tyrone Taylor playing good defense in the outfield and he was not good enough. So they got Cedric Mullins, who then was not as good defensively, but then was terrible offensively. So I'm hoping this Robert thing works out. Obviously, I'm a Mets fan. I don't want this thing not to work out. But I think there's reasons to have concerns, and I do definitely have concerns about it. So the last thing on this that I think was I feel like I'm burying the headline. I don't think I am, but it was one of the big headlines out of this was, again, what are the Mets going to do? What are they going to do when it comes to the rest of the team? So the sign I don't have is what David Stern said, when he said he feels comfortable with the position players that they have. So he cautioned it by saying this is a weird part of the offseason. Things become available that you would never expect. So you can't say never about anything, but that he feels comfortable with the position players. So I think like these mock lineups you're seeing with Luis Robert in there, like that's the team. I think in terms of like their everyday lineup, I think you got, we can quibble about who leads off. I mean, Lindor's probably still leading off. We can quibble about where everybody is, but I think it's a team centered around Lindor, Soto, now Bichette. Obviously, Simeon's in there. Obviously, Polanco's in there. You're going to have, now Luis Robert as part of the mix. Fernando Alvarez, if he can stay healthy. And then they're going to figure out what happened in left field. But that's the team. On paper, it's not the worst team in the world. It's a team that, on paper, should be okay. But it's a team that, from a line, and Simeon is obviously the other guy I didn't name. From a lineup standpoint, it's good. You're probably going to need some pitching. Like it's not a team that, we're going to just be able to bludgeon people left and right and we're going to just dominate teams to the point where we have an average pitching staff that's going to work. No, I think they're going to need pitching, and that's what David Stern says is what he's eyeing, is that the thing he's looking at now to improve this team moving forward is starting pitching. Here's David Stearns on SNY.
My preference is to add a starting pitcher. I've been open and honest about that through the entirety of the offseason. I can't say with certainty we're going to be able to do that, but we remain engaged on a number of different fronts in that market. We still got plenty of time to go in the offseason, certainly plenty of time before opening day, and so we'll see where it heads.
If I'm a Mets fan, I feel pretty good about that sound. He's not being stupid. He's not going to say, oh, yes, a starting pitcher. Like, I'm afraid Peralta's going to be a Mets playing stupid. But I think the fact that he said, I've been open and honest about what we're trying to do. I can't promise anything because it's just, he can't. You don't know what's going to happen. But there's a lot of time with this offseason, and we're going to explore all options. That tells me that they're going to, unless they just get screwed when it comes to like, okay, Peralta doesn't work out, and if they try to go after some other guy, school or something like that, the prices are so astronomical where they have no choice. Barring something, I think, unforeseen, I think the Mets are going to add a good to great starting pitcher. I think that is fair. I also was watching again MLB Network today. Shout out to MLB Now. MLB Network does great content. And baseball fans who watch MLB Network know that, so it's not a surprise to them. But I think for like maybe the more casual sports fan who maybe just feels like they have no choice but to watch ESPN all day, I think that MLB Network does not get enough credit for doing phenomenal shows. They have amazing content. And shout out to MLB Now, hosted by Brian Kenny. My mentor and good friend Rob Parker, obviously, is a contributor on that show. I think he comes on about once a week. But today they had Jason Stark on there, and they were doing a show from Cooperstown, and it was phenomenal. They just do great work. I'm a big fan of theirs. Shout out to them. They've also given us plenty of their talent for Maggie and Perloff show when I was booking shows for Maggie and Perloff. So I got a lot of love for MLB Network. But I'm watching MLB Network, and Jason Stark's on there. He's a longtime baseball writer. And I don't have the direct quote in front of me because it was on TV, but I have almost a close to the direct quote. And I'm telling you, this is what he said. He said, if he had to predict, there is a 0% chance the Mets don't add a frontline starter. 0%. That word, I'm not being hyperbole, or I'm not like misquoting. He said, if he had to predict, and this is someone who's part of the game, part of the breaking news game. Obviously, some guys, obviously, Jeff Passan's kind of become the king of the breaking news, and John Heyman's in that. But Jason Stark has broken stories left and right. He's talking to a bunch of people. He's a long-standing veteran in this game when it comes to baseball writing and baseball reporting. And he is saying that if he had to predict, there's a 0% chance the Mets don't add a big-time starter. And then you got the GM today saying, I can't promise anything, but I'm very clear about what I want to do. I want to add a starter. I think you should feel good about the Mets being able to add a frontline starter. And if that happens, if the Mets add a frontline starter to go along with Bo Bichette, you have these other guys that have some question marks. But I think you have to look at that and say, you know what? That is not a terrible offseason. That is a fine offseason with probably one major mistake, which was Edwin Diaz. That was a mistake. That was a miss. But I don't think if you add frontline starting with Bo Bichette and some of the other pieces they've added, I think that definitely lessens the blow of losing Pete Alonso. I do. And I don't think losing Nimmo was like a tragedy. It was tragic that there wasn't better return, maybe potentially, but like losing him, I think I was ready to lose him. So I think a lot of us will have to eat some crow if the Mets do what Jason Stark and I saw, actually, I mentioned Jeff Passan. Jeff Passan, he didn't say 0%, but he tweeted something today in response to somebody. Somebody tweeted, and Jeff Passan's also the man. He's one of my favorite people as well in this industry. I don't know him. I never met him or anything. That not something that's sort of personal, just sort of just following them and watching them. Because he will get in comment sections. He will mess around. Like, he's not afraid to, he's not ducking any smoke when it comes to his commentary and his reporting. But someone had tweeted like, hey, Mets got Robert and now they got Bichette. Like, is they get a starter? Can we not say this is a good offseason? And then Jeff Passan just in the comment section responding, and he was like, yep, you'd have to say that, and I can tell you they're definitely trying to get a starter. So, again, there's reasons to be a little optimistic that going into this Mets season that you're not going to see a team that was taking massive steps back, which is what it looked like was happening when you saw Nimmo, Alonso, and Diaz go out the door. They let all their bullpen guys obviously go out the door. Tyler Rogers is another piece. He was in that game today, so I was like, oh yeah, right, we lost that guy. And Brian Anderson, who's a play-by-play guy for the Brewers, he's singing poetic about how great Rogers is, and I'm like, well, now he's not a freaking Met, but like Rogers is gone obviously, and they lost Diaz being the big mistake. But if they can do that and they get a frontline starter to boot with the guys they've added now, you guys, okay, I'm intrigued. I want to watch this upcoming season. I want to see what this season is going to be like. I can't sit here and say I feel like totally confident. Oh yeah, the Mets they're going to take back the division finally, and they're going to get back to the NLCS. I think that the jury will be out. But again, I think it would be fair to look at that and say, hey, listen, if they do find a way to get a frontline starter, if that is Peralta, if that is Tarek Skubal or someone else like that, I don't think it's going to be a free agent signing, so I doubt it'd be like a Framber Valdez, but again, we'll see. I think that is totally fair to say. And here's, again, I mentioned the Jeff Passan quote, so I want to make sure you guys can actually see it. This is what he had put on Twitter today, responding to someone talking about, like, could you have to say this is kind of a good Mets offseason if they figure out this whole situation with the rest of the team? And, of course, earlier today, there you go. So he said, did you say this is a good offseason if they get a frontline starter? He said, this is correct. It's a deep lineup filled with guys who take freshman at-bats. Robert was a perfect high ceiling compliment to the high floor steadiness of Bichette, Polanco, and Simeon. And because of defense center field, Robert's floor isn't exactly low either. And again, Passan, not in this week, but he has said all throughout the offseason. They think the Mets also definitely will be in line to get a frontline starter. So the Mets will continue to be a team to watch. And I look at this offseason, again, sometimes change is not comfortable, but sometimes it's necessary. And I do look at sometimes the Mets and as difficult as it is to see some beloved Mets go, it might be best for the team in terms of making that next step and where they want to be to change the furniture around. Because we saw what they were doing with the nucleus they had. It was not working. That it could not be more clear. Could they every now and then have like a splash when they won in 100 games under Buck Showalter, or a splash where they make an unprecedented or unpredictable run to the NLCS? Yeah, they can have splash moments as a unit, but as a core long term, and now they've been together for a while now. So now you're seeing some guys that are now like a Nemo getting long in the tooth. It was starting to become time where it's like, we got to see some new furniture in here. And it may not look perfect. It may not seem like it fits perfectly. But this furniture we have now is kind of tattered. It's been through a lot. The dog has ripped it up a little bit in some spots. We need to move on. And that's what I'm saying. New York Mets fans, we're not going backwards. We're going forwards. Let's get to the comment section. Again, my guy Eric's been watching the show on IG Live. Shout out to the folks on IG Live watching the show. He says here, I like the recent pickups. However, tired of our players constantly being put out of their natural, quote, positions. That's what I mentioned earlier. I mean, that's one of the problems with this, right? Like, again, Beatty's had to play second base at times. We've seen guys having to move around the diamond. Jeff McNeil playing 100 different positions. So here we are again with the Mets. Now they're like living, and they're going to live and die with a lot of guys playing out of position. Like Bichette playing out of position, quote unquote. Polanco playing out of position, quote unquote. And Beatty probably won't get that much time at third base, considering Bichette's going to be playing third base almost every day. Though I don't know, maybe Bichette DHs sometimes too, or maybe he spells. I don't know. The infield rotation is going to be interesting. But if at face value, Bichette and Polanco are obviously out of position, and Beatty, if he's not playing mostly third, is going to be out of position. So that's a reality. And for, again, a guy who says that run prevention is his most important thing, you do kind of wonder, like, how important is run prevention if you're willing to put just defensive guys out of spots that they're normally playing. Now, again, his argument, I saw him say as well, like he said, we basically have, like, essentially 4, like, natural shortstops on our team. So, like, okay, yes, maybe we don't have guys playing their position, but we have, in general, guys who have good hands, have good, skill defensively, and that you have those kind of talents in the infield, you'll be fine. Again, that's how they're selling this. But it is something I would be concerned about. And also Eric here as well saying, AJ, was anyone actually excited about the Mullins deal last season? I know I wasn't. Yeah, I excited is strong. I was not excited. I think they needed a center fielder, and I was hopeful that Mullins could fill the spot. So excited, no, but I was okay. They needed to fill the spot, and now they have a guy who's a starting caliber center fielder. Let's see how he is. And Cedric Mullins was horrendous. Could not have been a worse trade, in my opinion. I mean, they didn't give up a ton, but just in terms of like getting something of value from him as an actual guy, he became unplayable. They had to go back to playing Tyrone Taylor because of how bad he was. He was awful. So, no, I don't think anybody was super high on Mullins. But now you got Robert, who not exactly high on him either. But at the very least, he definitely has... upside is such a weird word because it's like, what does that actually mean? Like, you're either good or you're not good. But if we're playing this game on paper, in theory, he should have more upside than Cedric Mullins. He's stronger. He's more athletic. I think he's younger. At his peak, he's been better than Cedric Mullins at his peak. So if either guy is going to like resurrect their career with the Mets, he would be the guy that would be the better player if he does. So from that standpoint, the quote-unquote upside, yes, he has more upside. And off rip, he's a better defensive player. So there's that already. So at least you're saying, okay, even if he can't hit just like Mullins can't hit, he'll be better than Mullins defensively. So we won't lose. Like, they got to go back to Tyrone Taylor because it's like, well, if Mullins is not going to hit, we might as well just put our best defensive center fielder out there. So now they won't have that issue. Like, if Robert's not hitting, he's just not hitting. But there's not going to be a drop-off defensively because he's out there. Because he's an elite defensive short center fielder. So that part of it, I get. That part of it, I understand. Would I have loved Bellinger? 1,000%. Would I have loved, maybe, again, getting some other guy maybe in here, a star in here? Definitely. But they had to get somebody. And he's the guy. I hope that he's not going to be a 180 hitter like he was for so much last season. Again, my guy Eric in the chat as well asking, who would be your pick for a frontline starter? I go back and forth on this, man. Because I go back and forth to like, man, do you just go for the final boss move and you say, we're going to go get Taras Skubal? Because I think he's gettable for the teams that have the kind of prospects that the Tigers would want. I think he's gettable. I don't think they're going to give him away. I think it's going to take a ton. But if you really want, I don't think you have to give him a claim. But if you really want him, I think you can get him. I think these teams are realizing, because he's a rental and the price is so high, they're looking at this like, especially the teams that have a lot of money, like the Dodgers and the Mets. I think they're looking at this saying, does it really make sense for us to give up all this capital for a guy who may leave in a year? I mean, if he goes to the Dodgers, I doubt he's leaving. But, in theory, I think that's a fair question. But thinking about like the stench of last season and what last season looked like it was going to be when they were 20 games above 500 and they were arguably the best team in the National League, and thinking that, wow, maybe this team does get to the World Series, and then they flopped the way they did. Part of you wants to come back bigger, badder, stronger than ever, and thinking, man, we need to add Taras Skubal to this rotation with some of these other pieces. Now you're looking at the Mets as they're never going to be the favorites as long as the Dodgers are around. But at least one of the biggest threats to the Dodgers repeating for a three-peat. And it's enticing. It probably would be too reckless because the danger is with the Dodgers being out there and the fact that almost, besides the Soto offseason, every offseason they've gotten the best free agent for the last 4 or 5 years, except for one offseason where Soto wasn't really interested in LA. This seems to be the one where it's, man, they gotta find a way to, if Taras Skubal becomes available, that they were going to be all in and they're going to do everything they can to get him. So if you're the Mets, am I going to trade up, again, big-time farm pieces for a guy that in theory could leave? You have to operate much differently than you did even 2 years ago or last year, where you feel like, oh, we got big wallets, so we can just get anybody. There's a bully on the block that's a lot bigger, stronger, and richer than it appears. Or at the very least, people are more willing to take their money than they are Steve Cohen's money. So I think you got to react more responsibly. It probably would be irresponsible to get Taras Skubal. Do I want Taras Skubal here? You're damn right I do. But I think my greater angels would probably tell me that it's probably better suited that they go after someone like Peralta. And Peralta, I think, won't cost as much from a trade standpoint. He'll cost you, but not crazy. I saw someone say they should trade. And shout out to Sleeper Mets, by the way. It's like an aggregator account. Sleeper Mets has helped me preparing for this show. I follow them. I know some people hate aggregators, and we can argue about the journalistic thing of aggregators. But for our jobs, for commentators, for streamers, for podcasters, for radio hosts, like, aggregators help you a ton, as long as they're doing it right. Dove Kleinman is the guy that people always get mad about because he puts these outrageous rage bait tweets. He's obviously rage baiting, so I don't count him in this. And yes, there are these aggregators who are just rage baiting. Sleeper Mets is not one of them, and they're great at aggregating Mets content. So I have no beef with them. But they're the ones I saw put out there that they would give up Jet Williams and Brandon Sproat for Peralta. That felt too much. I was like, I'm not giving you arguably my best position player, prospect, and like a second or third best starting prospect, a guy who before last year people thought was our best starting pitching prospect, for a guy who again also could be a rental. I'm not doing that. I think there are other guys in the system we can go a little bit lower than and still get a Peralta, but there could be a bidding war because the Dodgers want him. We mentioned the Yankees want him. So this is a piece of this. This is a reality here. So I'm not sure, man. I think I'd go Peralta, but there is that part of me that says go after Skubal, really make your presence felt, and really make this season now Mets versus Dodgers. Can the Mets actually knock them off? I think if they add Taras Skubal, it is a different ballgame internationally if they do that. So it's definitely a fun question. My guy Rob DeRay who's become a little bit of a character on the show, is in the chat. An hour late, you're slipping. I was not an hour late. I was like 10 minutes late, 15 minutes late. Relax, Rob. He's like the ombudsman of this stream, but he's my guy. Shout out to my guy Rob. He's part of my fantasy football league. We did radio shows way back in the day in college, and he's been supporting the podcast, supporting the live stream. So I greatly appreciate that, brother, even though he's always on my ass. Let's get to some other fun, bizarre, weird, crazy stuff. We've done an hour talking baseball, which is fun. You know, it just feels a little bit WFAN-ish. And I will say this, actually. I haven't announced it on X, but I'll announce it here. It's not like some crazy announcement, but I will be back on the Fan this weekend. First show of the new year. So excited about that. Maybe I would give myself a little round of applause there. That's always a little fun that you get to get back and talk to the folks on WFAN. I'll be hosting 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. on Sunday morning. So if you guys are up late, you'll get to check me out this Saturday overnight into Sunday. I'll be live on the Fan. So it's already been a very busy week. So some of this stuff we'll get to talk about, and I'm sure other stuff. I'm sure we'll get into some Knicks stuff as well. They've been in a complete tailspin. So that's be fun. So I will be on WFAN live as well as all these 40 Days, 40 Nights episodes. I'll be there live 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. I'll have more promo about it and more details about it as we get closer to it. But this weekend I'll be back on the Fan. So it's almost like a little bonus, 40 Days, 40 Nights. You got another night of EJ. I won't be obviously on that day because it's Saturday, and obviously this is a weekday show. But I will be doing a weekend show on the Fan, so I'm really excited about that. But again, let's get back to the weird and the wacky. Because this definitely qualifies as the weird and the wacky what was going on in Buffalo today. And I think it has big ramifications, not just for the Bills, but also for really everybody in the AFC. But if you're a Jets fan, and if you're watching the show, obviously you're a Jets fan as well. You may be a Jets fan, considering you may be from New York. That this definitely applies to you. The Bills held a press conference today. And when I tell you it was one of the most bizarre press conferences I've seen from, I don't want to say just any professional team, 'cause I've seen some weird ones, but from a team that, whether we want to argue and debate whether or not it's going to be a thing where like, oh, did they make this bad move here, the bad move there, they cost Josh Allen's prime, we can debate that. But they've been a winning program. Before this year, they won the division 6 years in a row. They've been seen as a respected organization under this regime of Pegula, Beane, and then obviously McDermott as their head coach, even if we have our beefs with all of those guys. This was one of the most bizarre press conferences I've ever seen from a organization that you hold to a high standard. That you kind of think, oh, they know what they're doing. They look like a smart organization. They may not get everything right, but they're doing things right over there. That's why they win all the time. I don't know about that as of today. I'll be honest. I don't know if I can look at the Bills organization after today and say that that is an organization that is buttoned up and knows what they're doing. In fact, if I was a Bills fan, I'd actually be quite concerned that the adult in the room was kicked out. It sounds insane to me to position Sean McDermott, who makes in-game gaffes, made locker room gaffes, talking about bigging up the 9/11 hijackers. He himself has had weird, bizarre moments despite all the winning. But I'm watching Terry Pegula and Brandon Beane do this press conference, and I'm thinking, oh, no. The Bills may have just let go of the adult in the room. The guy who actually knows what's going on, who's honest about the assessment of the team, who knows what they need to win. They might have let him go. Because what I saw from Terry Pegula and what I saw from Brandon Beane today was outrageous. It's the best way I describe it. So let's get down to it, man. So the Bills, they hold their press conference. They got to talk about the season now that the season's over. And, of course, address the fact that they have fired their head coach. Terry Pegula, he's not someone who, to me at least, maybe I'm not in Buffalo, so maybe he's talking way more. Maybe he's the Jerry Jones of Buffalo. I don't know. I don't think of him as a guy who's a front-facing owner, a guy who's talking about player personnel in this way. That's why this was also so weird. I just feel like these are things that typically I don't see from him. He's just like, Kathy Hochul, please give me some money so I can make the stadium thing. That seems to be the only thing he has seemed to care about since he's been there. Has been, get the stadium right. Will it have a dome or not? Can I steal some money from New York taxpayers? That seems to be the only thing I've heard him talk about. So he's not this guy who's like, again, a Jerry Jones type or a guy who's all in on personnel. He seemed like a guy who just was the guy who was cutting the checks. Well, he had a lot to say today. And he started with speaking about just how much pain was in that locker room after they lost that game to the Denver Broncos. And it had a great impact on him.
I want to take you in the locker room after that game. I looked around. First thing I noticed was our quarterback with his head down, crying. I looked at all the other players. I looked at their faces and our coaches. I walked over to Josh. He didn't even acknowledge I was there. First thing I said to him, I said, "That was a catch." We all know what I'm talking about. He didn't acknowledge me. He just sat there sobbing. He was listless. He had given everything he had to try to win that game. And looking around, so did all the other players on the team.
Okay, so it definitely paints a very bleak picture. We'll get to the commentary about what's going on with the catch thing. But Pegula says he saw Josh Allen crying, and it made him take action.
I saw the pain in Josh's face at his presser, and I felt his pain. I know we can do better, and I know we will get better.
So he's saying there, I saw what happened, I saw the pain, and I said, we can do better. That to me means I saw this guy crying that we lost this game, and I said, we got to fire our coach. So Sean McDermott gets fired, and now Brandon Beane, who I think there was questions about whether or not he actually was going to be part of this whole story and part of this whole Bills 2.0, as we knew there were going to be changes, and he gets promoted, which is stunning to me. I'm not here to say that Brandon Beane's done a horrendous job with the team, but he has made mistakes, a lot of mistakes. And it's part of the reason why this team can't get over the hump. And he got promoted at a time with a coach that he hired. Well, it's a little weird, Buffalo. But a coach he's been working with just got fired. So that looks very suspect. But Terry Pegula wanted to let it be known that he appreciates the job that Brandon Beane has done. And in turn, that's why he promoted him.
I want to express my confidence in the guy sitting next to me, Brandon Beane, and the job he has done in resurrecting this franchise. I'm not going to sit here and defend everything that we have done as a franchise, but the bottom line is we have attracted good people here.
All right, yeah. So he appreciates Brandon Beane. He feels like Brandon Beane has done a good job. I got to hold up just 1 second because my thing got knocked out. I want to make sure I can hear everything because I only heard part of that. But this is not even, it hasn't even gotten super weird yet. But it's already beginning a little weird. It's like, all right, Brandon Beane's a man, even though you said you had to fire your coach, the guy he's been working with this whole time. And now you're telling us things will be okay because he's still here and he's getting a bad rap. What? I take a pause real quick so I can just figure out my headphone situation real quick. But this is not good. This is not a good stretch at all for if you're a Buffalo Bills fan in terms of feeling optimistic about where this is going. I would be quite concerned about where this is going. So let's see if I can play the rest of the sound and hopefully I can hear it. So then here was Terry Pegula, who says he felt in terms of why he had to fire his head coach, considering he had to give up on he feels like it's not the general manager's fault, who's now the president. He explained that it was not simply down to just that one catch or one play or this game as to why the Bills had to move on.
I did not fire a coach based on a bad officiating decision. If I can take you into that locker room, I felt like we hit the proverbial playoff wall year after year. 13 seconds, missed field goals, the catch. So I just sensed in that locker room, like, where do we go from here with what we have? And that was the basis for my decision.
So he is saying that because he's been talking about this referee. He said, well, it wasn't just the refereeing call. Because they asked a good question. All right, well, is Sean McDermott still the coach if they win the game or if that call goes otherwise? And he's like, listen, it wasn't just down to that. We just, looking at the locker room, looking at the players, he keeps going back to this, like, watching their team and how emotional they were. And that being the impetus to be like, we can't get over the hump anymore. And therefore, I have to fire the head coach. But then still keeps talking about the catch, which he's bringing up. And I'm going to fast forward to one part of this because he is absolutely obsessed with this idea that the Bills got screwed. And I think it is of great concern in terms of, if you're a Bills fan, in terms of figuring out if they're going to be able to fix this thing, if they keep running around with this narrative that they didn't do anything wrong, they just got screwed.
Brandon, at the trade deadline, you said that you felt the team had a championship roster. What, in your mind, led to the group falling short of that?
I mean, Jay.
A bad call.
Oh, are you serious? Like, he interrupted the question to Brandon Beane about, you said you had a championship roster, you fell short. What happened? And the owner just, and look, he cuts the checks, so he's running the show. He just cuts it, he says, a bad call. Are you serious, bro? Are you serious?
I mean, Jay.
A bad call.
I mean, he goes on waxing poetic about all this other stuff, sad tears and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, he still feels like this all came down to a simple thing.
Bad call.
A bad call is where we're at. And the fact that he just jumped and just interrupted the question, a good question that deserved a fair answer as to why this team's not changing the team. By the way, last I checked, there was no confetti at Mile High. Last time I checked, there was no parading around the Lombardi Trophy to all the players before they get awarded. Last time I checked, there wasn't a brand new Kia or new Ford or new whatever car is the sponsor for a Super Bowl MVP. Last I checked, this was only a divisional round game. This was not a game that was for the Super Bowl. This wasn't even a game to get you to the Super Bowl. This was a game to get you to a game that maybe could get you to the Super Bowl. And he's a question about why this team fell short of its goal of being a champion. He is going to a bad call, quote unquote, in the divisional round. And let me just say this one more time. It was not a bad call. It was a tough break. It was a freak play. It was not a bad call. My guy Rod DeRays in the chat, I put his comment up there. The guy who catches the ball usually ends up having the ball. It is a really simple thing. And the people, they don't want, what I think is happening, well, I think a lot's happening. One, I think it's easy for people to just want to blame someone else for why you lost. So blame the refs is always an easy excuse. But two, I think people just like controversy. They like just stirring it up. So I think in general, the impetus is naturally to be like, oh, the Bills got screwed. Let's talk about this NFL being rigged and all. Like they just want to run to that because it's just, they think it's fun. But there's a third thing that's happening as well with this, which is people really don't know the rules. I don't know if they care to know the rules because I keep hearing this thing about the still shots, he had one knee down, or let's go back to what happened to Aaron Rodgers and the Ravens 10 weeks ago, or what happened in the game later that day with the Devontae Adams later that night to say that why this was a catch. And the rules experts, I hate these guys. Oh, hate strong. I hate the job that they do. I think that they defend these refs too often. They say nonsense. I'm not a rules expert guy. But the rules experts who are former refs and guys who are referees and people in the sport, hell, even Joe Burrow got into the mix and being like, you guys are idiots. You don't know what a catch is. And it's actually insane watching you guys keep arguing about this. It is really simple. If you are going to the ground with a catch, it's a move to go to the ground as you're catching the ball and you're coming to the ground. It is different than any other type of play in terms of like knee down, foot down, and all those things. You have to control the ball for the entirety of the play. It's not just, oh, your knee is down, so therefore now the play is over. Or your back is even down, and therefore the play is over. You have to come away. It's like Rob put up there. It's actually kind of simple. You have to come away with the football. It actually isn't that complicated, and this is the NFL's fault because there's all these different rules for what a catch is in different circumstances. It's become hard to explain, but it actually really isn't that complicated. If you're going to the ground while making a catch, you have to end up with the ball at the very end. It's simple. And there's a time mechanism for like how long it goes, obviously. But when you watch the play and you play it not in, 0.001 speed, you play it at even half speed. It's very clear he catches the ball, Brandon Cooks. He goes to the ground, which means now he has to survive the ground. He hits the ground, and almost immediately as he hits the ground, the ball pops into the other defender's arms, which then made it an interception. As I've said before, if that play happens, let's say McMillan's not there, and he goes to the ground, and the ball pops out of his hands and hits the ground, it does not matter that his knee was on the ground. It does not matter that his back at one point was on the ground. It does not. Those little screenshots he's showing don't effing matter. All that matters is at the end of the day, he didn't hold on. He lost control. It's the same thing here. He lost control of the ball coming to the ground, and when he hit the ground. And once that happens, if he does not maintain it, and if it hits the ground or goes in someone else's hands, at that point, it is an interception. It's a terrible break. It's terrible luck. Like I keep saying, I don't know why Brandon Cooks keeps getting a pass for this. Like, to me, he shouldn't be allowed in Buffalo for choking away what should have been a chance at going to the AFC title game. And yet, the owner, who's saying all this other stuff about how much McDermott was at fault for everything, is still going back to, well, at the end of the day, we didn't get it done because of a bad call. And that, to me, the messaging that you're sending and the tone that you're setting for your entire franchise is utterly, completely wrong and completely broken if that's where you're going. Because that play had nothing to do with Josh Allen. Well, I guess it was one of his turnovers. But Josh Allen had 3 other turnovers. Okay? The Broncos were able to capitalize on those turnovers offensively on short fields. The Bills gave up 33 points in this game. To put everything in terms of being a championship team on one play in the divisional round tells me this is not a team that's absolutely at all very serious about looking from within to see what the hell is wrong with this team. And I go back to that commentary and those comments we talked about yesterday when we heard the story that Sean McDermott had a meeting with these two guys, these two bozos, talking about the team and where they were and what his assessment was. And it sounds like he gave what he thought was his honest assessment, was that there are holes on this team. And I don't know if we have enough, given the holes. And when the response was it wasn't taken well. They didn't take kindly to it. They didn't like what they were hearing. And then he gets fired 5 weeks later. But I hear the owner then come into a press conference and say, why didn't you win a championship? He says a bad call. That reinforces that they don't think anything's wrong with this team. They don't think that they've made any mistakes. They don't think that anything, they're going to put it all on Sean McDermott. And they're going to put it all on the referees. That is weak sauce. That is loser energy. That is essentially everything that we've said about the Buffalo Bill organization for the last 50, 60, 70 years, all confirmed with this nonsense coming from this owner. To talk about a call and talk about Sean McDermott and in a game where you lost a game in the divisional round, not even the Super Bowl or the championship game, and do no kind of assessment from within as to where you're failing as a front office. If you're a Jets fan, if you're an AFC fan, if you're a Pats fan or a Dolphins fan, I think you look at this and say, oh, the Emperor has no clothes over there. Oh, they're led by a madman. There may be an avenue here. I know Josh Allen's still there, and he's Josh Allen. He's a superstar. But there's, again, a very good chance that now that McDermott is gone and they are led by these two guys, there may be an avenue here because of these guys who don't seem to have a real true assessment of what is actually wrong with this football team. And let's continue on that boat and we'll get to some of the stuff about Brandon Beane. He wouldn't defend some of his character, which is understandable because a lot of people are talking about he had a say in getting McDermott fired. Of course, Pegula was saying it was all him, and he's talked about why he fired him. But I wanted to bring this up as well because he was at one point again interrupted, Brandon Beane. We will hear from him. But he was interrupted at one point because, one of the things that he's been criticized about has been the wide receiver issue, which reared its ugly freaking head on Saturday when Brandon Cook can't hold on to the damn football. And he's saying, your wide receiver position, it's been a problem. You drafted Keon Coleman. That seems like it's a bust. Like, what do you say to your job performance when it comes to putting support around Josh Allen? Again, very good question. If you want to talk about this owner being unserious, he doesn't even let him answer the question because he has the answers himself. And boy, wait till you hear what his answers are.
Though the wide receiver position has been an issue with this team, and a lot of people out there believe you have failed in the free agent market, and then obviously with the Keon Coleman signing, which hasn't worked out. How do you answer the fact that you have not given Josh a good enough wide receiver room thus far?
Yeah, I mean,
Can I interrupt? I'll address the Keon situation. The coaching staff pushed to draft Keon. I'm not saying Brandon wouldn't have drafted him, but he wasn't his next choice. That was Brandon being a team player and taking advice of his coaching staff, who felt strongly about the player.
Wow. So Terry Pegula jumps in and says, take the general manager completely off the hook for this draft pick. This was about the coaching staff that pushed for this guy. And in fact, this was Brandon being a noble gentleman by allowing them to take this bust onto our hands. And we should be really not giving Brandon the heat for this. This really is the coaching staff that pushed for this. And there was more from Pegula saying that it is unfair for Beane to get the heat for the Coleman pick.
He's taken, for some reason, heat over it and not saying a word about it, but I'm here to tell you the true story.
The true story. That's interesting. He's here to tell you the true story. Well, let's talk about that true story, because the one thing about sports now, especially the NFL, is content is king, which means almost everything is being filmed, especially everything centered around the NFL draft. So, and I don't remember exactly why this content is out there. I don't remember if this was Hard Knocks or if this was an NFL draft show or if this was just the Bills, because these teams just make their own documentaries about the team too. But here is what was actually being said about Keon Coleman by Brandon Beane in the front office during the NFL Combine. This was when when Keon Coleman had run a poor 40 time by standards that I guess people apply. He ran like a 4.7, I think, or a 4.57, I think, or 4.59, something around there. So he didn't run a great time, which is one of the reasons why he wasn't a first round pick. Here is Brandon Beane's commentary. He's mic'd up. There's other folks talking that are a little muffled, so I'll try to, if I have to translate, I will later on. But I want you to hear how Brandon Beane felt about Keon Coleman. This is the Combine, which means this is back in like February or March.
Big surprises. You do. Which one? Me too. That's the film. 4, 5, 6, 7.
I'm glad he ran that. Help you get him.
Gabe was mid 4, 5.
4.54.
So yeah, I know the first part was a little muffled, but you heard very clearly Brandon Beane in the beginning because he's the one that's being mic'd, and there was subtitles when you watch the video. They're saying, is there anybody you were surprised about in terms of their performance at the Combine? And someone mentions Keon Coleman not running at the greatest time. That is when Brandon Beane, who's eating M&Ms, and again, you see him very chill, very cool. He's eating M&Ms, whatever the hell he's eating. He's like, good for us. Means it'll be easier to get him. I'm like, wait, Terry Pegula, I thought you said that basically he had to be drawn and quartered by the coaching staff to convince him to get Keon Coleman. Here he is at the NFL Combine saying that he already is eyeing him. So what actually is the true story? Did Brandon Beane not want Keon Coleman, or did he? Because here he is on film that you approved, saying that he wanted Keon Coleman. And it did not end there. Because, again, this draft process continues to be filmed. Brandon Beane is mic'd up. Again, this is not some, like, gotcha video. This is a video that's being presented for a show. And this is during draft night, after night one, regarding what the future was going to be and what their plans were moving forward into the next night. Here is what they thought about Brandon Beane. Here's what Brandon Beane thought about what they were going to do and their plans to target. Guess who?
Basically, when I went to bed that night, I was like, it's Keon unless someone just blows us away. We didn't feel anything was attractive enough for us to pass up on Keon.
All things considered. All things considered. Get the guy who's feels the best fit. Yep.
This might be obvious, but so tomorrow, who we picking?
We're just going to keep trading more. We're going to get 14 fifths. Barring someone offering us something stupid, we'll take Keon Coleman there.
Barring something stupid, we'll take Keon Coleman there. He said he went to bed, and all he could think about was they had to come away with Keon Coleman. Again, I mean, Sean McDermott was sitting there. I don't see any Sean McDermott clips being like, Keon Coleman's the next Jerry Rice. Keon Coleman's the next, Randy Moss. We have to, Brandon Beane, I'm gonna knock you out if you don't draft Keon Coleman. What is the true story, Terry Pegula? What is the true story? Did he get drawn and quartered and tortured essentially to take Keon Coleman? Or is it these clips in 4K where your freaking general manager is talking about how he's glad that his guy ran a 4.6 at the combine and that we need to bed dreaming about drafting Keon Coleman, and then he's telling his entire staff that unless I get 15 second-round picks, I'm drafting Keon Coleman. What is the true story? What is it? Because you're selling us a bunch of BS. You're selling us a bunch of lies. You're selling us a bunch of nonsense. And I'm getting hot. I'm not a Bills fan. I'm getting hot about this because the Bills fans deserve more than this nonsense you're giving them. This snake oil crap you're giving them right now. About how, again, everything that happened about this team was all Sean McDermott's fault. And saying that the one issue that people keep harping on about the wide receivers, that also was Sean McDermott's fault. When your own damn general manager is in 4K talking about how he wanted this guy. What is the truth? I mean, those Bills fans, they shovel your damn stadium for no damn money. They had to pay taxpayer money to keep them in the city because you were threatening to go to Toronto. And now you're gaslighting in their face, talking about how your general manager is not to blame for drafting a bust wide receiver who he couldn't stop talking about how much he loved the guy. Terry Pegula, you're a clown. So to sit here in his press conference talking about, oh, he's getting a raw deal, and it was the coaching staff, and Brandon Beane actually was being quite noble, and he didn't even want to take, Keon Coleman. BS. All BS. And what it sounds like an owner, this whole press conference sounded like the caricature of what you think about when you think about billionaires and super uber rich people who think that like nothing's ever their fault and they could bend the rules to their way and they could bend stories to their way and things will just go in how they wanted to go because they got all the money, they got all the power, and they could just control everything. This is like the ultimate caricature of that. Your team your team didn't win a championship because of a call in a divisional round, even though you've been losing in the playoffs for the last 6 years. Your team can't get a wide receiver because the owner, the head coach is bullying the general manager to draft the guys he doesn't want. You believe this crap? I know you don't believe this crap. Like I said, if I was a Buffalo Bills fan, I'd be like, oh crap, we might be in trouble. This guy is going to be running the show now. The general manager he's being emboldened by the owner to take zero responsibility for his mistakes. In fact, he's just putting it on other people. I talk about the proverbial clown music that I feel like should be playing at certain organizations. Like I've mentioned the Miami Dolphins. I've mentioned other teams where I think at the facility, I don't know exactly where the facility is in Buffalo. I assume it's somewhere in Orchard Park, but maybe it's moving. I don't know. But I would say they should just play circus music 24/7 because it's just a clown show. I never would have expected that the Bills would be part of that. But they should just, get the Barnum brothers and get whatever their soundtrack is, the music that they run. If they're on Spotify, just find their Spotify playlist and just play it for the next week at least. That's what they deserve. They should just hear circus music and clown music for the next week. That's what they are. They're a clown show. This was another clown show. This was an embarrassing moment for an organization that is usually way above something like this. Going to lying to your fans about who the hell is the problem and why Keon Coleman is here. By the way, also, you're a jerk. Like, Keon Coleman has had issues. He hasn't been that great. He's not that mature. He seems like a nice kid overall, but it just hasn't worked out there. And you're just blowing him up like this? Like, just like, I'm going to address the player. You don't even mention his name at first. He's just a player. And you're just throwing him under the complete bus, being like, well, listen, we didn't even want this guy. It was just the coach's fault. That's the only reason why we got this guy. I'm like, if I'm a player on the team, if I'm other athletes in the NFL, I'm like, oh my God, if I go to Buffalo, is that going to be me? Am I the next guy they're going to just throw under the complete bus to protect Josh Allen and protect Brandon Beane and say that it's everyone else's fault in terms of why we're not winning except for those guys? Am I next? If I was in that locker room, I'd be looking crazy sideways at this group. That was embarrassing. To say that with a straight face, and we know these guys lie all the time, but to say that with a straight face for a man that cannot defend himself because Sean McDermott is not around. I mean, in theory, could he call an interview tomorrow with First Take or somebody? In theory, of course he could. He's that famous. But it's not beneficial to him. It's not something that really he should want to do. If you're a head coach, you're fired. You want to lay low. You want to just stay low. Don't create headlines. You know, be a coordinator somewhere or just work TV and just be cool. Like, just wait until you get your opportunity up next. Don't trip. So he really can't even defend himself. So you know he can't defend himself. You know he probably doesn't want to. And you're just smearing his name left and right. He's the problem. He's the reason why we have this bum wide receiver who's still on our roster, by the way. What are you going to do about that? I guess are you going to cut him? Are you going to have to trade him? Who's going to trade for him now? We know you don't value him anymore. So even from a football standpoint, this was idiotic. I mean, just a truly embarrassing showing from the Buffalo Bills and their front office. And last thing on this quickly, I want to play Brandon Beane, who he did talk a lot during this. You wouldn't know because of all these clips from Terry Pegula that went viral today because it was, again, unbelievable what the hell was going on. This was Brandon Beane because there's this conversation being like, wait a minute, bro gets fired, you become the president of the team. And then we hear about this contentious meeting where you three were there. McDermott makes his presence felt and makes his thoughts felt about how he feels about the future of the team. And you and the owner were on the same page and not liking what he was saying. Seems like a power struggle was happening. And seems like you're the guy that won. Well, Brandon Beane takes that extremely personally.
That's hurtful to even hear that or say that. Like, I worked 19 seasons starting as an intern in Carolina and worked my way up. I came here and I've never tried to do that. I would love for anyone who's making that accusation to walk in these doors and ask any person, player, coach, trainer, anyone.
Okay, so he's saying like that's not true. Like that's like my track record shows me I'm an honorable dude. Even though you just let your owner lie about the guy you just fired right in front of our face, but I'm an honorable dude, and like everybody knows this organization knows that I'm not backstabbing anybody, and this notion that I backstabbed Sean McDermott in order to win this power struggle is unfair. And he continued with this, talking about how, again, this was a really hurtful accusation to be thrown out there against him and his name.
People can disagree with draft picks that I make or people I sign or I screwed up the wide receivers, whatever it is. Like, those are harmful things that, you know, I walk in the door and my wife's got tears coming down her face for stuff like that. And I'm going to damn try hard to win a Super Bowl here. I am. But for somebody to question my character like that, it is BS. And I've never done that.
If there's one thing I wish I could end completely in the history of sports figures answering questions from the media is I got a wife and kid, man. We don't want to hear it. I'm sorry. It's weak. It's lame. Everyone, we all got wife and kids. We all got family members. We all got friends. We got people who are our loved ones. You enter that arena and shady things go down. People are going to have opinions about what happened. To run around and be like, well, I got a wife that's crying now because y'all are saying I was mean in firing Sean McDermott is just flat out weak. It's weak. This is not about family. This is not about personal. This is about football. We're talking about sports. And Beane's not the first and last guy to do this. So it's not like I'm like slinging my arrows particularly just at him. I just hate that trope. I hate it so much. If someone is talking about, oh, you know what, that Brandon Beane guy, like, he's like a criminal or he is something, like, that's one thing. Well, okay, yes. Hey, listen, like, we got to be responsible with what we're talking about. We got to be responsible with our words. Like, we can't just be saying slanderous things about people, like, legitimately in their character. Like, yes, that does impact families. That does impact people. But we're talking about you fired a head coach and are allowing him to take the sword for everything that's wrong with the team. And people and their opinions are looking at it and saying, that don't look right. That coach did a lot for the team, whether he was perfect or imperfect. And I mentioned he's very imperfect. But whatever he did, he did a lot. And it seems unfair that he gets fired and you get promoted when the whole organization failed. Completely failed. They're talking about football. And then you run to, well, my wife's got to hear that I'm not a good person because, like, come on, man. Like, and I'm not saying it's not happening. And I wish nothing but the best for Beane's family. And I hope his wife, this is a tough time for them that they're able to get through this. I truly, truly believe that and hope that. But for him to bring that into his football job and talking about this is why you should temper your commentary about me because it affects my family, when we're not talking about this guy being a murderer. We're not talking about this guy being a criminal. We're not even talking about him, like, being a menace to society. We're talking about within his job, the opinion is that he did not look out for his guy who got fired and is taking all the blame for their failures. And they're looking at it and saying, you got promoted. That don't look right. And guess what? It doesn't. It doesn't look right. It doesn't mean that you got him fired. It doesn't mean that you stabbed him in the back. But it is not, he's saying it's BS. It's not BS. It's not a BS assessment to look at the situation and say, you guys had an argument. One guy got fired because you guys failed. You got a promotion after you guys failed. What the hell happened? Those are fair questions. But you try to take the teeth away from tough questions by running to the, I got a family and I got kids. Get out of here, man. We all hope your families were doing the best. We all hope that your wife can get over whatever struggle you guys are going through. We don't want any kind of beef or smoke from that regard at all. We respect that. But to bring this, I got a wife who's crying at home when we're talking about football? Who are these guys? If you're a Buffalo Bills fan, I'd be like, what am I watching? What happened to our team? We mentioned it earlier. We were 13 seconds away from beating Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs dynasty never happening. Now I got an owner lying in my face about the GM who had no power in drafting guys in the second round. And a GM who's saying, don't say mean things about me because my wife might be sad. I mean, what are we doing? This is Mickey Mouse stuff. This isn't NFL. This isn't professional. This is kid stuff. This is a joke. This sounds like something I see from the Jets. So again, I look at this situation, man. Like, if I'm these AFC teams, oh man, it's not good over there. It's Josh Allen's still Josh Allen, and he's still a beast, but they're vulnerable up there. They got an owner who doesn't have a clue. They have a general manager who's spiraling. They might be in a little bit of trouble, and I really think they might. I didn't come into this offseason expecting to think that the Bills championship window was closed. I saw this press conference today, and then, as if it could have gotten worse, and then I heard a report from Diana Rossini that Brian Daboll is the leading candidate to become the next head coach of this team. You know the same Brian Daboll that after his first year with the Giants failed to win more than, 5 games in the season after that? Who coached some of the worst offenses in the NFL during those years? Who then we learned was allowing players to miss practices and miss meetings and come late and was not disciplining guys at all, including rookies. That guy is now going to right the ship, apparently. Also, by the way, because Buffalo fans know this, a lot of other folks don't know this, because I didn't know this until I met Maggie Gray, and they know these Buffalo fans, they read everything about their team. He's also maybe the reason you lost that 13-second game. Because, yes, he called a great game, he threw all those touchdowns, but the reporting, I believe, from Ty Dunn, shout out to Ty Dunn, I believe he had this, was part of the reason why they had so many issues in those first few plays and the special teams play in that 13-second game, because Brian Daboll was on the headset and would not shut the F up. He just kept talking. And the defensive team and the special teams people couldn't properly communicate the things they needed to do for that 13 seconds strategy. And then, of course, they go down and they send the game into overtime. So the guy that actually may have started this whole mess, he may now be your head coach. A guy who's been a terrible head coach in the NFL for 3 years now. He's going to make bread on being the Bills head coach from something that he did as their offensive coordinator 5 years ago. And in his last act, he cost your team a chance to go to the Super Bowl, arguably. That guy's not going to be their head coach, according to Diane Racine, in terms of the favorites. Again, he had an interview today. There'll be more interviews. I think Joe Brady also interviewed today as well. We'll see how it goes. But Diane Racine says the favorite to get that job is Brian Daboll. And y'all don't think that team is in trouble. Y'all don't think there is reason to be concerned about the Buffalo Bills. I do. It seems extremely clear that is a program that is on the way down. And we're really going to learn how great Josh Allen is. Because now I'm realizing, Josh Allen's going to have to overcome a level of incompetence that even I underestimated. I probably sound like the biggest Sean McDermott guy. I was not the biggest Sean McDermott guy. I crushed one of the first show I did on this show, on this live stream in these 48 49s. I crushed him because of how he coached the Jaguars game. I've criticized him on Maggie and Perloff show. I criticized him on every content I've done. But he's gone, and now they may replace him with a guy who's more incompetent. Now the owner feels more emboldened to talk about strategy and change stories and again, totally shift the blame for the entire team's failures on others. Not him, not the front office, not the players. The players are crying and they're devastated because they came up short. He's saying it's not their fault. It's Sean McDermott and the referee's fault. That guy's the leader of the program. That guy's the leader of the organization. You got a general manager who says, stop being mean to me because my wife is sad. These are the guys leading this thing. That's who Josh Allen is trying to carry to a championship. And now it makes more sense why Josh Allen felt so hurt and probably why it's so difficult for him. Because I'm carrying a bunch of bums. Not even the players I'm talking about, because he's got some good guys on his team. I'm talking about these front office folks, the owner, and the coaching staff. I'm in the way of the world of Buffalo trying to get over the hump to get back to the Super Bowl and win and overcome what happened in the 90s. He has the weight of the world on his shoulder trying to carry these guys. And it's not going to get any better. It's not going to get any better. We got one more story to get to, man. And this one is interesting. There's already been some stuff coming out of this because of the big scoop that happened. I mentioned earlier. There was a report earlier today from ESPN, Baxter Holmes, the long-form piece, talking about the issues with the Los Angeles Lakers and what he described as major friction between Jeanie Buss and LeBron James. We now have gotten quotes from Jeanie Buss regarding her stance on this. And she is, of course, kind of denying a lot of these claims. But when I tell you that these claims were juicy in terms of what they were implying, in terms of how Jeanie Buss has felt about this whole LeBron James era with the Lakers, it is not good. It seems like this was a era of complete, utter dysfunction. And it looks like we're in a situation now where perhaps some of this weirdness that's coming down with the end of the era of LeBron James being there stems from all this friction that had been going on behind closed doors. So in this long article that you should go read on ESPN.com, because it also details a lot of the strife just within the Lakers, period. It's not just a LeBron James versus Jeanie piece. It's a piece of just about the Lakers' dysfunction and how they've now been sold. And that, Dr. Buss's great dream of his kids running the organization is dead. And a lot of it is because none of these people can get along. But a big part of this was about LeBron James as well. And among the things that were dropped in here were that Jeanie Buss apparently often grumbled about what she considered LeBron James's, quote, oversized ego. She felt also that Clutch Sports was exerting way too much control and way too much power over the Lakers organization. She also did not like that LeBron James and a lot of his orbit and a lot of, the machine that is LeBron was trying to kind of promote him as the quote-unquote savior for the Lakers after they won an NBA championship. And she disliked the lack of accountability over the Russell Westbrook trade. It was something that's been a sore spot for Laker fans and people who have talked about this a ton. Clutch Sports and LeBron James and that team have tried to rehash this Russell Westbrook thing. That is crazy how much this is still a talking point. Russell Westbrook, I think, has played on legit at least 2, maybe 3 teams. No, yeah, he has played on 3 teams since he was a Laker. And still, Russell Westbrook is a sticking point in the Laker organization because of just how bad it went. And she did not like how LeBron James and Clutch Sports backed off and said that was not us. We had nothing to do with Russell Westbrook coming to the team. That was all the front office. That was all ownership. When it was widely reported how much LeBron recruited Russell Westbrook, there was a meeting that happened in LeBron's house, I believe, with him and Anthony Davis to convince Russell Westbrook that this was a spot for him, and that there was reporting that he was telling the Lakers organization that he wanted them to go pursue Russell Westbrook and not other avenues where they were pursuing, like DeMar DeRozan and the like. That's all out there. And Clutch has been gaslighting people allegedly and saying that is all a lie and that he didn't have nothing to do with Russell Westbrook coming to the Lakers, even though there's also reporting saying that he did. That also has pissed off Jeanie Buss. She's also apparently, because of just all these issues with LeBron, the ego, the lack of accountability, the propping himself up as a savior, the Clutch Sports aspect, she even privately mused to folks on whether or not they should trade him instead of extending him way back in 2022, I think, or 2023, whatever his last contract extension was prior to this recent one. Again, I'm listing off all this stuff. Also, felt LeBron was ungrateful for the Lakers drafting Bronny James. Again, LeBron has pretended as if he didn't put his thumb on the scale at all in terms of getting Bronny James to the Lakers and getting his son drafted, even though his son averaged 3 points a game as a freshman at USC. Lakers drafted him anyway, and it seems like LeBron's just moved on as if yep, the kid, he landed on third base and he definitely hit a triple. That's definitely what happened, and his not, apparently, according to this article, in terms of how Jeanie Buss has felt, she's felt that LeBron has not been grateful to the Lakers for giving his son an opportunity when it seems quite clear he's very far away from being an impactful NBA player. And then finally, she begrudgingly gave him the contract extension, fearing that not signing him would be a bad PR hit for the team, which is why LeBron was back with the Lakers. He's been here this whole time. So explosive from Baxter Holmes was filed this morning. Jeanie Buss has officially responded to these allegations about her beef with LeBron James. She said, quote, "It's really not right, given all the great things LeBron has done for the Lakers, that he has to be pulled into my family drama. Say that it wasn't appreciated is just not, in terms of the relationship, to say that it wasn't appreciated is just not true and completely unfair to him in terms of her relationship with LeBron James." So she is saying that this is all false and that this is not at all the situation. I know we're in a weird time in media and everyone thinks the reporters just make stuff up and they lie. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there's never been a bad story or never been a story with agendas or never been a story that's had missing context or a story that has been untrue. But there's a lot of stuff at stake, livelihoods at stake, to make sure when you're reporting something that is as close to accurate as possible, or at the very least, from your perspective, you've been given that it is true. Maybe there's a perspective you didn't get that was not made aware to you that you need to get. But Baxter, I don't think, is saying, hey, I'm going to go in and I'm going to screw the Lakers and just make up some stuff about Jeanie Buss and LeBron James. Jeanie Buss may feel like LeBron James doesn't deserve this, is unfair. It does not mean that she didn't say any of these things to other people. Which goes to, again, a messy day for the Lakers, where they now have to talk about this LeBron James awkward situation again, and now this idea that their still current owner, technically, because she is, well, I guess they technically call it the governor. Like, she's the operating governor of the team, I think, for now. I don't think she's, like, backed away yet, if I'm not mistaken. Apparently has had all these issues with LeBron James and has actually wanted him gone. Which is not, to me, all that, like, surprising. Like, it's a stunning report to see, and it's stunning to hear. But, again, I will tell you, like, talking to Laker fans, being not in the Laker orbit, but, like, watching from afar and sometimes peeking in, see what they're thinking. This, like, love fest that, like, LeBron's fans have and the NBA world has had with him is just never been that with the Laker fans and the Laker community. So it's not that much of a leap to think that the same things that the fans have complained about LeBron James is also being complained about by the team's owner. That they also see some of the same things. And there's some things that the fans aren't even akin to that then they may also now be learning and say, well, it's not surprising given all the other stuff we were complaining about with LeBron James. Now, again, Jeannie's denying it, but I look at this and it's what I said earlier. It feels like LeBron is a athlete and a guy that is stuck in limbo. It feels like he there's a line from Pusha T, man, from Infrared, which was a diss track to Drake. But to be honest, I actually feel it's actually more of a diss track to just Cash Money in general, because everybody gets it from Cash Money, also Birdman and Lil Wayne. And I always say that I kind of feel like, to be honest, while we talk about this to Drake in that song, I always felt that the actual lines about Lil Wayne I thought were way more like striking and cut way deeper, because he says in the line there, because talk about Lil Wayne and his career, you know, Flash Without the Fire, another platinum selling rapper, you know, Trapped They Can't Retire, people get exposed with the facts and I'm the liar. Like, LeBron with the Lakers situation, it almost feels like what Pusha T was talking about with Lil Wayne, where I feel like he's trapped. He needs Hollywood. He needs LA because of what it means for his brand, what it means for him, what it means for Clutch Sports, what it means for everything. But he's in a place that I don't think really wants him and has not prioritized him. And there's nothing he can do about it. He can't, you know, be and moan and get the people around him. And I know Jeannie at one point felt like it was a PR nightmare to not give him an extension. I think that's different now. I think if they decide not to sign LeBron James after this next contract, I think that everybody will be like, yep, we understand. Bye. Like, the chokehold he has had on organizations for 15 years is, or more than that, he's played 23 years, I guess 21, 22, most of those years in his NBA life. You know, let's say 20 maybe, say the last 2 years have been a little different, is over. It's completely over. And he's a platinum plaque rapper who can't retire because he still has money to be made. He still can play at a super high level, and he's still chasing a ghost. And if he can win more championships, it helps his case of being an all-time great and the greatest of all time. And he's stuck because he has this relationship with a team that is most beneficial to him just because of convenience, but is not actually helpful to any of his personal goals. Not as a basketball player. It is maybe in terms of getting the most money to be able to buy a team, and again, being in Los Angeles, and he has now, again, entertainment companies. He's an investor in so many different things. Like, being in one of the media capitals of the world is important to him, and being a Laker is important to him. But this all this stuff about this relationship and how much it frayed over the years, it's not that surprising, but it seems like it's real. And there was a time where LeBron, because of the media arm that he has and the mouthpieces that he has, and because of just an amazing player that he is, so just in theory, just being like, of course people would side with LeBron James. He's LeBron James. He's arguably the second greatest player of all time. Some people think he's the greatest player of all time. Because skills have diminished, because there's a new star, because we're now kind of moving on from LeBron James, now that power he doesn't quite have anymore. And I saw Bomani Jones say this, and I thought it was really, really smart and well said, was there really is. We talk about nobody's bigger than the Shield, meaning the NFL. There's kind of also nobody bigger than even the NBA. At least not entirely. And the reason why I say that is because he made a point about how. Do you guys remember how Michael Jordan's career ended? I know you say, oh yeah, right. He retired and he came back and went to the Wizards and he played 2 years and like that was kind of just it or whatever. When Mike came back, remember he was running the Wizards. He was a president of basketball operations and a part owner of the Washington Wizards. He got the uniform on and went back to play because the owner of the team, Abe Pollin, said, the team sucks. Nobody wants to come watch us play. Come back and play. Jordan's like, well, I can't be an owner and play, so I like divested a bunch of stuff. And Abe Pollin's like, yeah, whatever. We'll figure that out at the end. But I need you to come back and play. And we'll get you back in your job afterwards and whatever. But we need to come back and play, help this team. He goes back and plays for the Washington Wizards. It goes how it goes. They never make the playoffs. He plays pretty well for a 40-year-old guy, but he's not the same Mike. And then he retires. And then unceremonious, he was very obviously it was a big celebration and all stuff. And Michael Jordan's end of his life, in his basketball life, was obviously celebrated in a big way. But in terms of how he was protected and how he was celebrated by the team he was on, that protection wasn't there. They played the year. They did the farewell tour. He finished up. Then Mike said, all right, I played. We weren't that good, but let me come back and let me get my ownership stake back and let me become the president of basketball operations again. Let me go back to doing my day job. And Abe Pollin said, adios, guy. We don't want you back. Thanks for the 2 years of playing basketball and winning 35 games a year. We're not going to let you run this team again. Hit the bricks. He was unceremoniously banished from the Washington Wizards. This is the Wizards. Think about Michael Jordan. And yes, I know he's not Michael Jordan playing with the Bulls, but he's still the entity that is Michael Jordan. He is like this. He's a sports, literally like a sports god. He's the most famous basketball player ever. And he lost a power struggle with the Washington Wizards. They felt that they had the power and the PR and think about it and be like, nah, we can get bro out of here. Like, he came back and he's going to win his job back. We don't really want him back. Let's get him out of here. And it worked. He tried to come back and they were like, not really. We don't really want you back. Go find something else to do. Like, it was I'm reading on the Wikipedia. It was assumed that he returned to his position as director of basketball operations. But then on May 7th, Abe Pollin fired Michael Jordan from the role. He fired him. Michael Jordan got fired by the Washington Wizards. The Wizards are arguably the most irrelevant franchise in the NBA. And Michael Jordan is the most impactful figure to ever play in the NBA. And they felt like they could just jettison him and kind of lie to him and just do the runaround and just get him out and it was over and that was it. And it was. He left. He was like, oh man, I feel like I was betrayed and all this stuff. But we just went on our normal day. The Wizards went on to be the Wizards and they were there. And then he tried to find another team. He eventually got with the Charlotte Bobcats that eventually became the Hornets. I mentioned that story, and that's a story Bomani Jones had reminded us of. And I think it's appropriate when we talk about the end of LeBron James' career that we talk about father time coming for everybody when it comes to being a player. Father time also kind of comes for everybody when it comes to being like a power broker in the NBA. When it comes to being, when for players, owners is a little different. Obviously, they're the owners. But for players, you could be Michael Jordan. And you could be swindled into putting on a uniform at 40 years old to play for the Wizards, being promised you'll get your job back, and then you get your job back, and then you're immediately fired by an owner who is a loser as an owner. And then we just move on with our day, and there's nothing to see here, nothing to hear here. So for LeBron James, that's why I talk about him feeling like a platinum plaque rapper trapped and they can't retire, to quote Pusha T, because I think he's looking at this being like, yeah, I don't have the power I used to have. LeBron used to be able to put a little tweet out there, whisper in this commentator's ear, whisper in this reporter's ear there, and then worlds would move. Players get traded, coaches get fired, people get shifted left and right, and that was the power that he has. I think he is learning right now that he is a mortal man, and that mortality is being displayed again today by this report coming out where Jeanie Buss, obviously she didn't give quotes to this report, but people felt emboldened given what this season has been for the Lakers and LeBron's status with the team, and I think people being fed up with his era and some of the fallout from that. We played the sound from Jovan Buha last week about how Laker fans, not Laker fans, should be people in the Lakers are not happy with this Rich Paul podcast where he's talking about trading Austin Reeves and stuff. And now you got people within the Lakers letting the chopper ring, talking about LeBron James in a way that I can't imagine people would have talked about him even 5 years ago. Clock is ticking, man. Clock is ticking. It comes for everybody, and this has been a great lesson, I think, in terms of just like you think anybody's untouchable in the NBA. The Michael Jordan Washington Wizards era should have been the cautionary tale for everybody that when you're an NBA player, Father Time ain't just about your knees getting creaky. The power that you once had, no matter how great you are, that is temporary. And LeBron is feeling that mortality today. That is a good place to leave it. This has been a 2-hour live stream. I think this is the first time I went above 2 hours. I came on a little late, and I had the scheduled time wrong on my YouTube, so I wanted to make sure that anybody that was here, they got to see as much as you can. Of course, apologies for all that. But this has been a fun show, man. Like every show we do on New Generation Media's 40 Days and 40 Nights, we're recording these, well, live streaming, not recording. We're live streaming every weekday, Monday through Friday. Catch us same time, 8 a.m., 6 p.m. And we're going to be on. I mean, we're not on at 6:03. Just hang around. I'll be on there 2 minutes later or whatever. But lock in 8 a.m., 6 p.m., barring some terrible knock on wood thing. I'll be here every day talking sports, talking pop culture. This was all a sports show because, man, these were some juicy, fun stories to talk about this evening. So, again, you can catch it on New Generation Media on YouTube. That's where we're streaming live right now. New Generation Media. Make sure, again, like the video, be in the comment section, comment on the video once it's already up, and tell us what you think. And, of course, subscribe to the channel. That gives us great support. We're also streaming live on X, EJ_Stewart. If you're not following me on X and you are on X, make sure you give me a follow on there, EJ_Stewart. We're streaming live on Instagram Live, IG Live. Make sure you follow me on there as well. Action EJ. We have accounts for New Generation Media on both IG and X. On X, we're New Generation Pod. On IG, we're New Generation Podcast. You can see that flowing down there on the ticker below. And, of course, every episode gets podcasted on our audio streaming platforms. So whether it's Apple Podcasts, whether it's Spotify, whether it's SoundCloud, whether it's Stitcher, whether it's TuneIn, whether it's Google Play, search New Generation Media, and you can catch this episode of 40 Days and 40 Nights along with all the other episodes of 40 Days and 40 Nights because I can finally put up Day 7. Excited about that. I figured that out finally. All episodes will be up on there, so make sure you're locked in over there and getting those episodes in. If you can't watch the show live or you can't watch the show, you're on the move, maybe you're working out, maybe you're on the subway, maybe you're driving, you can, of course, listen to all these episodes on any podcast streaming platform that you use. Again, New Generation Podcast Network, where you'll find. Do not search 40 Days and 40 Nights. Search New Generation Podcast Network. That's where you'll find 40 Days and 40 Nights, along with all the other shows that encompass New Generation Media. That includes New Generation Hero Talk, Imperial Broadcast, our Star Wars podcast, and our wrestling podcast, Off Script. That'll do it for now for this supersized version of 40 Days and 40 Nights, hitting the 2-hour mark. That's quite fun. I want to thank the listeners, thank the watchers who are watching the show. Again, support any way you can. We'll be back with day 9 in the morning, 8 a.m. sharp. So be there or be square. I am EJ Stewart. Thank you guys again so much. I'll see y'all tomorrow morning. Later.